Welcome back. Let us discuss the Vegas Golden Knights. And if your answer is, but I don't want to, well, we're here. We're going to discuss the Vegas Golden Knights. This was a season where I felt like, maybe now there's enough changes, there's been enough turnover, maybe we see some struggle. Maybe Vegas is going to have that year where, there's some setbacks, but no. Through 40 games, the record is 28-9-3, which is fantastic. Last year, through 40 games, 23-12-5, which is still very good, but not as good as this year. The year before, the season they won the Cup, they were 26-12-2 through 40 games. And the season prior, 23-15-2 through 40 games. So Vegas just doesn't play badly at this whole hockey thing. Now, their current cap space is there, $2,070,448. So the Vegas Golden Knights are in pretty darn good shape. And unlike some of the other teams, I'm not going to go through their recent record because they've won 9 of their last 10. So there's not a whole lot there to look at. I will talk about their scoring by period. If you're looking for some kind of maybe a weakness, there might be something there. But looking at this lineup, I just want to go through it. So these are the line combinations I pulled from Daily Faceoff. So should reflect their most recent game and how they had everybody positioned. But seriously, so you got Tanner Pearson, who at the time he was brought in on a PTO. I thought, well, I don't know if he's got anything left at the NHL level. We shall see. He's been very good. He's been very good for them. And he's on a line with Eichel and Stone right now. So Eichel and Stone, one thing we've seen a trend towards in the NHL is pairs, where you get a pair of forwards that play really well together, you leave them together. The third guy you can rotate out, but you have that pair, and you get that pair going. And the third player on the line is important, but not vital, right? So Eichel and Stone being together, Pearson's going to get points just playing with those guys. Eichel and Stone have remarkable chemistry out there. Then you've got Hertl, who has been good. And the interesting thing is, Tomas Hertl, if he was putting up the kind of points that he is this season in San Jose on that contract, I think that there'd be discussions about, Hertl's producing but not great. But because he's in Vegas, it's okay. Vegas is the top team in the league, so Hertl doesn't have that pressure to produce the way that he did in San Jose. William Karlsson, he's been my favorite member of the Vegas Golden Knights throughout their time there. Dorofeev, I've been a fan of Dorofiev's for years, and he's broken through this year. So Marchessault's exit is his opportunity, and he seized it. The team's given him every chance to succeed. And then you get into third line, you got Olofsson. Olofsson has produced perfectly well in Vegas after a year in Buffalo that wasn't great. He's had a few years in Buffalo that weren't necessarily great. But in Vegas, he's been perfectly fine. Howden at points in his career before he got to Vegas. I remember people talking about, Howden sucks and can't wait to see Howden gone. When Howden was traded to Vegas, Howden, he's not going to do anything there. He's very good. He's filling in for Nick Roy as the third line center. He's been good. Kolasar's having a career year offensively. You're getting physicality with him, and if he needs to drop the gloves, he can. Then on the fourth line, you got Ron Bjerg. I like Ron Bjerg. I think there's a little bit of talent there. I think that he's a good fourth line forward, good depth option. Schwindt's been a good pickup for them. And then you got Holtz. Holtz has not produced the way that I thought he might. In fact, Dorofeev's occupying the spot where I thought Holtz should have been before the season started. I felt like Holtz could have been a 20 or 25 goal scorer. But no, Dorofeev's going to be in there. Olofsson, if he can stay healthy the rest of the way, is going to get his share of goals too. So, as I mentioned with Hertl, Holtz doesn't have to score. Holtz doesn't have that pressure in Vegas that he had in New Jersey. And it is remarkable how when a player doesn't have that pressure, they kind of find their game, and then that offense could show up later. Now, injuries, Barbashev has been out. They haven't missed Barbashev, which is insane because Barbashev's up around a point per game. And Nick Roy is a fantastic two-way forward whose offensive game is probably underrated. This is as close to, I think, a perfect forward group as you're going to get. There are others that are very good too. I'm not saying there aren't. But, yeah, this is crazy depth for Vegas. And you can't just shut one player down. So, like, if you shut down Eichel, fine, but there's plenty of other players on this team that can hurt you. You shut down Stone, great. But there are other players who can hurt you as well. And then the blue line is so well put together. So you've got Hannafin, who they brought in and then immediately extended when they brought him in. Pietrangelo, who came in as a free agent from St. Louis, of course. McNabb, one of the few remaining original Golden Knights. Braden McNabb, just excellent player. Theodore, also one of the remaining original Golden Knights. Theodore probably doesn't get as much attention as he would if he played somewhere else, where he was the unquestioned number one. And he could be an unquestioned number one on other teams. But in Vegas, he's part of a very good top four. And then the bottom two of Haig and Whitecloud, they play so well together. And they are a really good shutdown duo on the blue line. And then the one injury on the blue line is Ben Hutton. Hutton's a good number 7 defenseman, but you can overcome the loss of Ben Hutton, right? And then in net, you got Hill and Samsonov, which might be where people would perceive there being weakness. Remember when Aiden Hill was a farmhand and, he was bouncing around a little bit, went to San Jose, didn't play very well, and then goes over to Vegas? Samsonov couldn't, get that starter's job in Washington. They don't keep him around, doesn't stay in Toronto. And now he's been very good for Vegas. Vegas, one thing I've always praised with them is their pro scouting. They seem to know exactly who to pick up when, and the players they pick up almost always, there are exceptions, but almost always fit in really well. There's no real issues. And while there's always been discussions of how long it takes for a player to get used to new surroundings, and the estimate being as much as, 2 to 3 months before a player really gets comfortable with the new team, in Vegas, it seems like they're comfortable right away. And I think it's because this team treats its players really well. They seem to have a really good locker room. Everybody seems to be on the same page. And there doesn't seem to be that same transition to joining the Vegas Golden Knights of figuring out, I don't know how to work these systems. So either the systems are simple enough for players to understand and play them. Stone today talked about how, they're playing well, and with the systems they're playing and everybody, pulling their weight, that they should be perfectly fine in the second half of the season to keep this going. There's a quiet confidence with Vegas that extends into when they're down, they're still not out. And they still keep playing their game even when they're behind. There's no panic in the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, their upcoming schedule tonight, they're at home against the Islanders. And their last loss was against Montreal. And this one feels like it could be a trap game. It absolutely could be a trap game for them where maybe you overlook them. But their next game after that is on Saturday. They're at home against the Rangers. We know what a disastrous run the Rangers have had lately. And then rounding out the homestand, they host the Minnesota Wild on Sunday, a very banged-up Minnesota Wild team who might be less banged up when they meet Vegas, but that'll be an interesting one. Then they go on a 3-game road trip. They go to Nashville on Tuesday, followed by an away game in Carolina on Friday the 17th, and then they're in Chicago the next night on the 18th. And Chicago showed last night against Colorado that they can be giant killers at points, right? Then they have a home with the St. Louis Blues. They're at home against them on Monday the 20th. Then they have a couple of days off before they play them on Thursday the 23rd in St. Louis. And then they're in Dallas the next night on Friday the 24th. So this upcoming schedule, it's not bad. It's honestly not bad. You've got a couple teams below the playoff line, one that's beat up, one below the playoff line, and a team that's inconsistent. Then you've got 3 games against 2 different teams that are below the playoff line. And then you play Dallas. Dallas is tough at home, but Vegas on the road, not too shabby. So looking at one item that people always bring up with Vegas, the LTIR. The LTIR. Yeah, I understand that the Mark Stone thing always ticks people off, but their contract structure is pretty good. And I don't think they really need to do, if you believe that it's skullduggery that they've engaged in with their LTIR motions, fine, but they don't really need it. As I mentioned, they have cap space. And when you look at their contracts, some guys here are on contracts that have aged very, very well. And I pick and choose here because honestly, there are some other contracts on this team that are pretty good. Mark Stone stands out, $9.5 million till 2027. With how dynamic he is offensively, how good he is defensively, he steals pucks and makes it look effortless. He does it at center ice, he does it in his own zone, he does it in the offensive zone, he just takes it. He just skates in and, yeah, I'll take the puck, thanks, and does not take a penalty on the play. Then you have Karlsson at $5.9 million till 2027. Whether Karlsson's productive or not, for how well he plays defensively and just for what he brings to the lineup, at less than $6 million a year, That's a ridiculous bargain for the Vegas Golden Knights. Then you got Barbashev, $5 million cap hit till 2028. It looked risky when they signed him to it, but like I said, he's up around a point per game, so that's pretty good risk. It turned out pretty well for them. Nick Roy, $3 million cap hit till 2027. An excellent third line forward who can score as well for $3 million. Man, what are the other GMs thinking? Then you got Dorofeev. He's at $1.84 million cap hit till 2026, and he's an RFA for 1 year. He has 1 year left in his RFA eligibility, so look for them to sign him to a long-term extension when we get past July the 1st. Don't be surprised when they sign Dorofeev to, I would say, 6-7 year contract. I could see it because they do tend to take care of their players pretty darn well. Olofsson, he's on an expiring contract. His cap hit's $1.08 million for Vegas this year. That is easy. That is something that, and honestly, Olofsson's playing well. He'll probably get a raise. And Vegas has proven over the years they're not shy about letting people go. Pacioretty, Fleury. There are examples of players that just they get rid of because we need to make room. They let Marchessault go last summer. Riley Smith gone. So they're definitely willing to move on from players if their contract demands don't line up with what the team's plan is going forward. Theodore on the blue line, $7.43 million cap hit until 2032. We're going to see defensemen getting $12, $13, $14 million cap hits in coming years, providing the salary cap goes up as much as it's supposed to, and I have a feeling it will. But yeah, Theodore at less than $8 million for his cap hit, that's a huge bargain right there. White Cloud at $2.75 million till 2028. And I understand he's a third pairing defenseman, but I think that's a bargain. Not that Pietrangelo at 8.8 or Hannafin at less than 8 aren't bargains as well. And so they save money on these contracts. Samsonov, $1.8 million cap hit. His contract expires this coming summer. And I am sure that if they let that contract expire and Samsonov goes, they'll just go out and find somebody else. With the success that players have had in Las Vegas, with the success that the franchise has had, it's a bit easier to talk guys into taking less money. People talk about the tax thing, and sure, you can talk about the tax thing, sure. But in Las Vegas, you are now in an area where the team's playing on the Strip, because you got T-Mobile right there on the Strip, and it's this beautiful, dynamic area. But when it comes to moving your family in and raising a family and all this, honestly, the area around Las Vegas, if you can handle the heat, it's actually really nice. So, honestly, I understand why players go there. I understand why they sign long-term deals. I understand why NHL players just love this area. And players who have played with Vegas that retire, a lot of them I've seen just stay. They stick around because of how the community is and how the community's had this connection to the Vegas Golden Knights right from the beginning. So, looking at their record, in October they were 7-3-1, November 8-4-2, in December 10-2, and this month so far they've won all 3 games they've played. There's not a weakness I can bring out. Now at home, they're 17-4. They're not as good on the road because how could they be? They're 11-5-3 away from home. That's still a very good record on the road. Against the East, a little more weakness there, 6-6-1. But you don't have to worry about playing the East in the playoffs until the Stanley Cup final. And against the West, they're fantastic. 22-3-2 against Western opponents. So tonight they're against the Islanders? Maybe. Maybe that's something for the Islanders to cling to. Like, hey, they've struggled against the East compared to the West. Maybe we can make them struggle. Or maybe they win against the Islanders and the Rangers. We come back to this week from now, we can go, well, they play pretty well against the East. They're 8-6-1. So we'll see what happens in those ones. But scoring by period, if you're looking for something that maybe you can cling to and say this is Vegas' Achilles heel. First period, they score 42 goals. They allow 34. Good, not fantastic, right? It's a +8. It's not bad. Second period, they score 38. They allow 40. So that's a bit of a negative. The problem is the third period. And the third period, Vegas is fantastic, scoring 60 goals this season and allowing 30. A +30 in the third period, and we're 1 game away from the halfway point of the season. If they can keep that up all season, I don't see anybody catching them for first in the division. And I wouldn't be surprised if they finish first overall. And then we can get into the discussion about whether or not that's a jinx and whether or not that means they're never going to win the Stanley Cup that season, but could happen. In overtime, they've scored twice and they've allowed 2. Overtime is a bit of a crapshoot for most teams. Some teams are bad in overtime and some teams are really good in overtime. For Vegas, it's a 2-2 setup for them. So it will be very interesting to see how this season unfolds from here going forward, because I don't look at this schedule and say, well, they're going to have their struggles, but this is a Vegas team that I don't know if they can do this for the full 82 games. Every team has that period where there's that dip in their play and they start losing some games. I don't know if Vegas is going to have that. The lineup is so solid from top to bottom. Smart moves have been made from top to bottom. And it has to be irritating for a lot of fans who are not necessarily Vegas fans, because for all of the, well, they got handed a good team, the problem is most of the players that are now on this team have been acquired since then. So this is just good management. And you could gift a lot of GMs good teams and watch them screw it up. And Vegas has not screwed it up. Even when there have been times where I have off camera said, oh, that's a stupid move for Vegas. That contract's a bad idea. I don't know what they're thinking. And then 6 months later, it's like, well, I'll be darned. That worked out really well. Well, all right. And it feels like with Vegas, that happens a lot. And when they do make a mistake, when somebody comes in who doesn't fit in, or it's not going to work, or they're not playing well, Vegas is not shy about moving that same player out pretty quickly too. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. They don't try to make it work. They don't sit around with focus groups and try to figure out how they're going to get this guy to fit in the lineup. They're just like, well, this doesn't work. We'll move the player back out. It is something that for some of us seems like, they don't have loyalty to the players, but Vegas's loyalty is to winning. Vegas's loyalty is to what is the best move that will get them closer to a Stanley Cup, and what moves will save them the money in order to be able to bring the other players in who can help them win the Stanley Cup. So it's great to have these wonderful memories of Marc-Andre Fleury and other players who've come in and played really well, guys like Marchessault, but in the end, it's about winning. And the results so far bear out that they've been right. This is a team that has been built very, very well. And they've got a nice mix of veterans and some younger guys too. This is a team that I think is going to be dangerous for a long time, because we're into year 8. And so if this team was going to fall apart, it would have fallen apart by now. But they've got a Stanley Cup in 2023, and we could potentially see a Stanley Cup headed their way again, couldn't we? Which I'm sure everybody would be perfectly fine with. The internet would be very supportive. I'm kidding, of course, but we'll see. If Vegas does win another Stanley Cup, I'll head back to Las Vegas and hope for better gear for their Stanley Cup win. The gear was kind of lame last time, Las Vegas. What was that? You guys win a Stanley Cup, everything's glittery and sparkly, and then the Stanley Cup stuff comes out and it's just, eh. So don't do that again, but we shall see whether or not Las Vegas wins that again, which I understand is something that a lot of hockey fans won't necessarily want to hear, but it is hard to find a weakness with this team. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.